I speak the truth. Episode 5. Roosevelt Skerrit, a rapacious creature. In the Dominica Labour Party manifesto of 1995 entitled, "Our Future is with Labor," Rosie Douglas espoused the need to make whatever sacrifice necessary through leadership by example in order to create an economy of opportunities for all. This was his vision, a man with no self-interest, very generous, charismatic, friendly, visionary and full of wisdom. In 2000, Dominicans gave him what he had been pleading for, a mandate to develop Dominica. One of Rosie's objectives of his vision was to consolidate a small cabinet which would be robust enough to deliver the goods and services to the people, bearing in mind the financial state of affairs of the Dominica Treasury. Mark you, the socioeconomic status today is not different from the situation back in 2000. Roosevelt Skerrit was not in agreement with the post of junior minister, therefore he retaliated and threatened to leave the party to join the UWP if changes were not made to accommodate him as a full-fledged minister of government. His brazen assertions to Rosie was definitely not a surprise to me. It reminded me when Rosie negotiated with Roosevelt Skerrit in accepting to become the DLP's candidate for the Veal constituency. He gave Rosie 3 unacceptable demands: a vehicle registered in his name which he sold immediately after the elections, a new job in the interim, and a specified sum of dry cash. Unless all these conditions were met, Skerrit refused to step foot where Labour Party meetings were held. Did he have any interest in the party then? Today, the writings are on the wall. Let's contrast his display of attitude with candidates in the likes of Reginald Austrie, Urban Barron, Kelly Graynow and Matthew Walter. We made no demands on Rosie. Our love for Labour triggered our decision to run for the DLP. Again, this is evidence that Roosevelt never had any allegiance to the DLP. He embraced the opportunity to do just what he told me in 2002-2003 he came for. He had ulterior motives. Unfortunately, in October 2000, Dominicans mourned the demise of Rosie Douglas, who suddenly died of a mysterious heart failure. Jean-Pierre Charles succeeded Rosie Douglas, our beloved Prime Minister whom I dearly missed. During his tenure as Prime Minister, the situation with the country was rough, coupled with undue stress covertly engineered by a cabinet member. Through the creation of a cabinet pressure group with the primary objective to exert unrelenting psychological and emotional pains on PM Pierre Charles. I can recall quite vividly when Pierre Charles accompanied me to Antigua to give moral support to a cultural extravaganza organized by the Division of Culture. At breakfast that morning, Pierre Charles revealed to me how dejected and disappointed he was in Skerrit and his accomplice. He lamented on the many deeds he had done for both ministers, but nothing sufficed. They continued undermining his efforts. This outpouring of despair, frustration and sadness reminded me of 2 times in 2 consecutive weeks that Roosevelt Skerrit unexpectedly came to my office as Minister of Community Development and Gender Affairs to make a statement and a request. In this context, I will currently deal with the former, and in another episode, I will deal with the later. Roosevelt Skerrit, in the presence of his number 1 accomplice, made it categorically clear to me that they could never leave politics like Charles Maynard and Rupert Sirhando. What he meant was that both gentlemen left politics without garnering a large amount of money. I was flabbergasted to hear him repeat his modus operandi twice in a fortnight. The 2 pieces of declaration caused me to distrust him in particular as the spokesperson, hence the reason I did not vote for him when the successor for Pierre Charles was being chosen. I recognized him as a traitor and great underminer to both Rosie Douglas and Pierre Charles, who incidentally died of similar heart problems. His excess greed for plenty money, materialism and political power brought him to Barbados to visit the office of the ambassador of China without prior permission from the then PM and more so cabinet's consent to prematurely discuss an issue which was currently under discussion at cabinet level. I can recall clearly that Han Osborne Riviere was tasked with that responsibility to undertake a feasibility study and then report with alacrity to the cabinet of the government of Dominica with respect to changing of diplomatic relations from Taiwan to China. All these disturbing issues overwhelmed Pierre Charles, thus inflicting emotional distress on his heart, consequently succumbing to death. I am confident, if Mrs. Justina Charles, widow of the deceased PM, knew the inhumane treatment that were meted out to her husband, she would have never opted to run in Grand Bay under a Skerrit administration. Moreover, the Grand Bay folks who dearly loved Pierre Charles would have retaliated in the polls, and today Vince Henderson would not be the parliamentary representative of the Grand Bay constituency. With that said, August is half gone and there is no sign of a delegates' conference. This behavior is further proof of utmost disrespect to Labourites who sacrificed themselves for the Labour Party. Skerrit has made no such sacrifice. This act of defiance in the face of Dominicans speaks volumes, but it will only serve as fuel to the fire and an impetus to bring good news to the uninformed, the voiceless and the intimidated ones. Additionally, based on the aforesaid, I believe that there is no shock in hearing about the multiplicity of allegations concerning the involvement of Skerrit in shady deals. The Dominican public wants answers about the millions of dollars which are deposited in foreign financial institutions, and the ownership of the many huge buildings which have been built and some undergoing construction, as I write in the Roseau, Morne Daniel areas. Is there smoke without fire? If there is a piece of ember, I think no one is above the law, and hence, a forensic investigative team should be contracted to bring to light once and for all the truth about all the alleged acts of malfeasance in public office. Politicians must be taught a perpetual lesson that when they are elected by the people to manage their affairs, they should do so with complete honesty, accountability, and transparency. I will end by saying, honesty is the best policy.